Good afternoon. My name is Larry Lempert. I've headed up the AutoCat program at Bloomberg B&A for a number of years. I'm going to say AutoCat because it's a lot shorter than saying Auto-Categorization, and also because I like the little mascot we adopted. So B&A publishes legal and regulatory content, and we're using AutoCat to apply topics from our taxonomy to news stories, to judicial opinions, and to state and federal agency documents. The approach we're using is rule-based. I've talked a lot about machine learning versus rule-based, and I'll say that ours really was a strict, old-fashioned, Boolean sort of rule-based approach. And we chose that because of the number of terms in the taxonomy. Getting training sets to do machine learning on 3,360 terms was just not something that we thought was feasible or that we thought would really give us the results we needed for a legal audience. Software we're using is from Expert System, one of the vendors here. The particular suite is Luxid, and that was brought to the market by Temis, which was then acquired by Expert System. And we're now transitioning to their Cogito software, which is something we're looking forward to. We've been in production on all the news content produced by Bloomberg B&A since the beginning of the year. That was a real milestone for us. We'd done it on some documents before then, but news was the real target. So the magic number is 2. There are 2 stages at which quality is measured, and that is during the rule development process, and then when you're out there live in production. There are 2 focal points for quality measurement, which is looking at the topic across a lot of different documents, or you could look at a document and all the different topics in it. And those are 2 very different ways, but both important. And then finally, the magic number 2. There are 2 types of quality measurement, statistical and more subjective. And both of those are going to be important. So our rule writing process begins with identifying a gold set. That is, a set of documents with index or tagging in it that you can compare against. We use sets of typically 5,000 to 8,000 documents, news stories, a fair number of documents, but pretty short. And then we would run, before doing anything, we'd run this through a quality report that the AutoCat software produces. And this is an example of an early one. It's a pure statistical report showing the documents tagged by the indexers, the documents of those that the AutoCat system got, and then the documents that the system brought in that were not tagged by the indexers. It's an interesting name. Those are called false positives, but we kind of put the false in quotes because a lot of those topic assignments are not really wrong. And that's one of the issues I'm going to talk about, is that factoring that into account sort of takes you outside the realm of statistics. Now, it's important to look at the effect of scoring. We do apply a score to approximate an indexer's sense of aboutness. And I know you probably can't read this. The first term on that chart is 401k plans. And without applying any threshold, it gets 100% recall and 38% precision. If you apply the threshold that we use, meaning that we're only going to take documents above a certain score, then the recall does come down to 94%, but precision goes up to 50. One of the vexing rules of working in this area is that whenever one goes down, precision or recall, the other one goes up. And if anyone has a way of not making that happen, I'd love to hear it. Okay, so that's statistics, and it's a great starting point. It gives you something to measure against as you go along and make sure that you're actually heading in the right direction. But we do, in the rule development phase, an analyst will do a sampling of documents and say, I want to see where all the documents that miss this topic, and that'll help me with looking at false positives. And I want to see all the documents the documents that miss that topic, which will help you with recall. And then I want to see the documents that the system tagged that the indexers did not tag, and that'll help us work on rules that improve precision. Now, you might ask, why do sampling of these individual documents when you have, this great statistical report? Well, I mean this with no offense whatsoever to any indexers, and especially the ones at our company, some of whom are here. But out there in the trenches, indexer tagging is not perfect in every document. So we call it a gold set, but some of these documents have a little copper tint to them. The reason being that indexers are not totally consistent all the time, either indexers as a group or even the same person over time. We have a taxonomy governance group, and they issue directives. Now, the directive on how to apply a term may have changed in the time since these documents were tagged, since these are legacy documents, and the time you're running it through the system now. So that's another reason why you might want to do actual sampling. And then we have terms that the scope is just not clear. Sort of a gray term when you really wish the terms would be black or white. One example from our taxonomy is healthcare reform. People might apply that a little differently. Not every change that's made in the law is a reform. So all of those are good reasons why AutoCat might miss a document, but you might want to take that miss with a grain of salt. And then I also said we sample documents for false positives. The main reason there is that there could be valid language in the document that the rules or the application of the taxonomy is finding. Now, if there's valid language there, that's not a rule problem. It might be a scoring problem, something that we need to work on with the relevancy score. But if the rule is finding the language, then that's not really a false positive, and that's a different nature of problem in terms of someone who's really looking at the rules. So an analyst is going to ask, when it comes to misses, would a user looking for that topic really feel like this particular document was missed, even though we call it an AutoCat miss? And for false positives, would a user brought to this document feel like we just waste their time? With that in mind, they can give a score, and we use this, 1, 2, or 3. 1 is a good result, 2 is okay, 3 is bad. In developing rules, we're really trying to minimize the number of 3s. So the cycle, as I described it, is really one of wash, rinse, and repeat. We do rule changes and taxonomy changes, run a quality report, sample the misses and false positives, go back to making rule changes, do another quality report. And hopefully that cycle doesn't go round and round too many times, and you end up with a rule that you think is as good as it can be. So that's developing the rules themselves. Now we're out there in real life, and we want to know how well we're doing in the production environment. So what we're looking at before was a focus on the topic across many documents. Now we're looking at documents and seeing how well those topics are doing. We have a big advantage in that we do have indexers looking at 60% of our news articles. So we have something real good to compare against. And we also do some indexer tagging after the fact of cases and agency documents where they're not tagging them in real time. This allows us to produce some pretty good reports. So here's an example, again, the focal point on the document. Here's a daily report of all the news stories that ran through for the day. It shows you the topics that AutoCat tagged. It shows you the topics that the indexers either retained or felt they had to add. when they looked at the documents done by the system. And that allows you to compute recall and precision as a nice statistical measure. Now, if you have someone, as we did in our taxonomy and indexing department, who's really good with Excel, they can take that report, which runs as a script every night, and then consolidate it, and you can look at how you're doing over a period of time. Take a month, or you can actually select any period of time and get really good data for a statistical analysis. So that's great, but we also want to take into account that there are reasons, good reasons, why AutoCat might miss a document or miss a topic in a particular document. And we want to consider those false positives that aren't really false. So I came up with this idea of adjusted precision, adjusted recall. And I want to just take a minute to go into an example of the kinds of adjustments that could be made. Now, these are adjustments that made sense in our environment. I think what you would want to do is look at your own process and say, in what way do the statistics not really tell the whole story? And then you try to tell the rest of the story with these adjustments. So a caveat in looking at this is a close look at 38 stories. Now, what we had a moment ago was 150 or 160 stories a day, aggregated over a month. So the data is really quite powerful in terms of giving you a statistical look. And you can't do the sort of thing I'm describing with a lot of documents. But, we could do it on 38. We could do it every now and then. And it gives us a really useful perspective, I think. So here's the adjustment on recall that we made. In our process, we had a very large set of rules. They're very complex. So one of the concessions we had to make is that a high-level subject area has to be chosen to send a document to a particular annotation plan. So tax or securities or privacy. One good reason why AutoCat might miss a topic is that the editor, this is a human who has to do this in real time, might not have sent the document to the right annotation plan, or not all the right annotation plans. So the rules can't work if they never get the document. And to adjust for that, I did a count of what the recall would be if the document had been sent to the correct subject area. In other words, if it got to the right annotation plan. So the blue column on the left is recall just out of the box statistically. And for that day, that 38 stories, we had recall of 67%. Adjusted for this subject area problem, and one further adjustment, if AutoCat got a narrower topic, even though the indexer had signed a broader one, we didn't really consider that a miss because the AutoCat got a topic in the hierarchical path. So we adjusted for the subject area problem and this broader, narrower issue. And the orange column shows recall of 75%, up from 67. So that's already giving you a different perspective. Now the gray column is another adjustment. Out of those 38 stories, we took the 3 key topics. Stories get a lot of topics, but what were the ones, even assigned by the indexers, that were really important to get? And say, well, how well does AutoCat do at getting the 3 key topics in these 38 documents? Now, in that case, recall went up to 80%, starting at 67% out of the box. 80% is starting to look pretty good in our world. Now, what about precision? Okay. Pure statistical precision is that yellow bar, 74%. But if you adjust for the extra topics assigned that weren't really wrong, in these 38 stories, precision went up to 95%. So 95% is really good. Now, you might wonder, recall in our world is a lot lower than precision, even after all these adjustments. The main reason for that is that we consciously did it that way. When we went through this, the bigger problem was false positives. And I thought Tom put it really well yesterday. The one thing you don't want to do is put something really stupid in front of people. So this was our way of making sure we didn't put really stupid stuff in front of people. And so we tuned this for precision, and as you can see, 95% versus an adjusted recall in the 80s. And then there are some further adjustments you can do with, again, a good person who knows Excel. We looked at, now moving back to a focal point on the topic instead of the particular document, looking at topics across all our documents for a given time period. The orange bar are the topics assigned to documents by indexers. The blue one is the topic assigned by AutoCat. So that first one is our topic, corporate income tax. Indexers were assigning that much more often than the AutoCat system was. Now that's a little red flag for us. It means that maybe that topic should be sent to the analysts for some further work. Now here too, an additional manipulation coming out of those daily reports. This looks a lot like the quality report that we showed coming out of the AutoCat system when we did the rule development. The difference here is that with the help of our expert, we were able to generate this report from stories live in production. So that top one, 401k plans, is getting perfect recall, and well, near perfect recall, missing one, and it's getting perfect precision. So we can say, we're doing pretty well on that topic. We can look down the list and see others that need work. Again, the main point of this, we have people that are doing rule improvement and they have a limited amount of time. We want to send the topics to them that are really most fruitful for them to work on. We also do metrics, of course. Everyone wants metrics. We look at the number of terms that we need to work on each month, how much work we had to put into them. That's useful for guiding our own process and also for reporting up the chain. So I'll conclude by reminding you the magic number is 2. 2 stages where you can measure quality, 2 focal points, the topic and the document, and 2 types of quality measurement. When it comes to those measurements, both the statistical and the subjective are important, but statistics, because they don't tell the whole story, you might want to look at the possibility of adjusted recall or adjusted precision in ways that make sense for the way that your own rule system works. And finally, it is invaluable both to have good developers that can write these scripts, pull out stuff from the data each night, and then people that can really use that data. It's a great example where you have data on the one hand, but then you need to pull the knowledge out of it. And so you do some manipulations of the data with those charts and graphs. So you really have some usable knowledge to inform your program. Okay, thank you, and here's your next speaker.